This is the North Carolina Fusion Podcast.
Brought to you by Wake Forest Baptist Health. Thank you for joining us on the North Carolina Fusion Podcast. My name is Scott Wollaston, and I serve as the Executive Director for the North Carolina Fusion. Today I will be speaking with Sarah Bridges, Chief Program Officer, soon to be Chief Experience Officer for North Carolina Fusion. Sarah has been a key member of our staff running the Twin City Recreation Soccer program for several years, and now moving into a bigger role, overseeing all our programs and the experience of our families. And we wanted our membership to have an opportunity to learn more about Sarah and the huge impact she's making on the club. I hope you enjoy. Welcome everybody to the North Carolina Fusion Podcast. Today we have Sarah Bridges with us. Sarah is our Chief Program Officer, soon to be Chief Experience Officer. She's been running our Twin City Recreation Soccer program for many years, and she's done an incredible job, and now moving into a new role with the club, where honestly she's going to have an even bigger impact and really help the experience for our players. So no pressure there. Welcome to the podcast. So today, we're just going to have a chat and give people an opportunity to really learn about what you're doing, because a lot of times people don't know what we're doing behind the scenes and don't get to see that. It doesn't always get all the way down to the experience on the field. So we're going to talk about that. So I think the first thing we want to do is I would love for you to tell people about your background, where you came from, experience in youth sports, experience prior to that, and
all right. Yeah, so I actually grew up in Winston-Salem. So I played for Twins, which is the east side or west side of this program now. Played, a lot of years. Gosh. Started when I was 4 or 5 in Optimist, and then moved into the Twins program early, and played through high school. So I was on the first ever state championship team for the girls program, which is awesome.
That's
so
cool.
That was back in, like 10 years ago. I'm sure it wasn't that long ago.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. It's probably like 20, 25 years now. Oh my
gosh. And who coached that team?
Chris Turner.
Okay.
So, he coached me all the way through high school.
Chris
so I played for him.
Forsyth Country Day.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Still working there. And I played for him at school as well. So I went to Forsyth Country Day.
Okay.
And we won 2 state championships there. So had some success on the field in that space. And then I went off to Carolina. Go Heels, and studied education.
You just split our membership in half.
Sorry.
That's okay, go on.
The membership that matters? Oh, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I probably did, but that's okay. So I went off to Carolina, studied education, minored in English, and finished in 2008.
Okay.
And then went and taught for 5 years. Went back to my roots. I went back to Forsyth Country Day and taught. Ran the summer programs, the winter programs, coached basketball and soccer, and then I got connected with you. And then I moved over, not Holmes, but moved to the club, and I've been working in the rec program and coaching and doing all kinds of things, I feel like.
Yeah. Bookkeeper for a little
while, yep. So multifaceted,
yeah,
right? That's what we're going with. So try to wear a lot of hats, do them all well. So that's my hope, at least. So excited about the new space and being with the east side and impacting a bigger group of members.
Awesome.
So that's the hope.
So tell us, how did you meet your husband?
On the soccer field, loving soccer. No, he worked for Twins. He started way back, way before me. So we met here. Yay!
Awesome.
It's important. It can happen. So we got married 4 years ago. Is that right? 2015? You should know.
I should know. I was there.
2015, so going on 5 years. So,
awesome.
Yep.
Great. So tell that experience that you had playing for Twins, right? And living here and now seeing what Fusion has become. Talk about kind of the difference in what you experienced back then to now in terms of like what's similar, what's different.
Yep. So I think the biggest piece is back in the day, your team was your team, and you had no other time with anybody else. So we played in the same group of kids for, 5-10 years together, and never really saw other teams. We didn't train in the same place. We trained at varying locations all over the city.
It didn't quite feel like a club. It was your team.
We were like, you were your own club within your team. I didn't know what was going on with other teams. I had no idea. So I think that's probably the biggest difference. It's exciting to walk out on a field and see basically 30, 40 teams training from rec to our competitive team. So that's a massive change, I would say. No community at all. You just didn't know anybody else.
And do you like that in terms of like probably the community was that small group?
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. So we're still connected via Facebook and other avenues,
Sure.
and definitely made the relationships. Obviously, that's the most important thing from all of this, I think, for me. So they were impactful to this day. I still see people that are back in Winston, and they have their kids in our program now, which is kind of cool.
That's
so playing
awesome.
rec or whatever they're doing. So it's fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is a lifelong sport. So
Yeah.
you're in it for the long haul, really.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And in terms of your experiences that you had on that team, what are the things that you remember most now looking back at it?
So I was young. I was the youngest on the team, and I definitely was a shy child, I would say. Super competitive, fiercely competitive, but definitely shy. And I remember like the tournament weekend where I kind of blossomed and was like, I'm not that young, and this is really fun. And I couldn't tell you how many games we won or lost or anything like that, but the impact of the just joy that we had. I mean, we laughed. I mean, we were ridiculously crazy and did stupid stuff. We TP'd Chris Turner's house one time. I still remember doing that. He probably remembers that well. We did a really poor job, I think, but it was super fun, and our parents were involved and laughed and thought it was hysterical, and we just did fun things together. They threw my 13-year-old surprise birthday party, so I still remember that. So they were my real friends, and that was what it was about. It wasn't really the X's and O's of the game. So
awesome.
That would be the big piece.
So as you've kind of, I guess, your experience at Twins first in terms of the rec program, what, I think a lot of people don't understand what we do at rec. It's our biggest program, recreation. It's incredibly important to introduce players to the game, introduce our families to the game, talk about what does a recreation director do, and I guess now what's Andrew Fleming's job like running the entire rec program for Fusion from West and East?
So the rec program is basically a program that is for everyone. You could be at any level, and if you want to have fun and you want to be playing, it's for you. So just starting out at whatever age you are. If you're 13 and you are ready to try soccer for the first time, it's a great space for you. If you've been playing for 7 years, it's a great space for you. So I think that's the most special part of the rec program. It really is designed to be convenient and be really fun. So so Andrew... He's a champion. So I would say there's over 3,000 kids in the rec program from the east to the west. So obviously his role is definitely logistical and administrative, and how can he communicate well with that many families and make sure they know where they're going, what they're doing, when they should be there. But it's fun. He knows that the end game is awesome, and once the kids are on the field, mission accomplished, right? So I think that's the biggest piece, is that its value is so important because it creates a space for kids that maybe want to play other sports and do other things, and they don't have to commit to this year-long program, and they don't have to travel very far really at all. They can go in their backyard, really. So we try to find spaces where kids don't have to work very hard to get to do what they love. So
And what kind of the biggest struggles with running the rec? What are the things that you every season you're like, this problem's never going away?
The weather.
And we've been lucky we've been very fortunate.
It hasn't
this
rained
fall.
all season. No Saturday games have been canceled. That's never happened ever. So the weather is definitely a challenge. It's an uncontrollable, but it impacts everybody. So that would be the hardest thing to deal with and manage, because if one cancellation happens, everything snowballs from that, and you have to change a lot of things. So
especially with 3,000 kids,
definitely,
trying to figure out change of fields.
It's terrible.
And coaches who coach multiple teams,
So I think that's the biggest, obviously, difficulty.
What about coaches?
So
Volunteer.
everybody's a volunteer, which is awesome. Honestly, it's awesome. It's over 300 volunteers that make the program run. So I think the hardest part is, 95% are super committed and excited to be there, and the other 5% are like, what did I just sign up for? And they typically turn out awesome, and it's fine, but they have the like deer in the headlights. What in the world am I doing?
Yeah.
I just worked 9 to 5 and now I'm on the field. But I think our parents respect that and understand that, you know, the volunteers are doing something unpaid,
right,
and doing something because they love their kids and they love the game and things like that. So,
and we have a lot of volunteers that aren't parents of kids on the team.
Yeah, we do.
So
just
who are some of those?
Yeah, so we have plenty that just want to step out and be a part of the game.
Yeah.
We have some that played for us in the past and have come back and joined us on the field. We have kids that are in high school that want to coach like a 5U, 6U team.
Yeah.
And their season has ended or something, you know, and that they play in the spring or fall or whatever, and they come out and get on the fields on Sundays,
cool.
and they usually do it in 2s or 3s, and they're usually awesome.
That's
so
great.
It's awesome.
You're
Yeah.
probably great role models. For
Definitely, and I think
the
they
kids.
realize how hard it is. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, coaching isn't what I thought it was.
Absolutely.
And it takes work and effort. So.
Would you say that the biggest way that our families could potentially help, or really want the potential volunteering to coach, right? Sometimes if they're
please
other
volunteer.
kids, if their other kids are out here at the field, maybe they can come over and
we are really
help.
flexible with volunteers.
Perfect.
Yes.
And then I guess the other thing, and just as we've discussed kind of the recreation program, and you've talked about kind of it is for everyone. Really helping us spread the word about
definitely.
the program. I think that our families telling other people about the program and the great experience they've had honestly it's probably the biggest compliment we can get.
Definitely. I would agree
is
with that.
referring someone to the program and just and letting people know, just give it a shot. Play for a season. See if your son or daughter likes the sport. And if they don't, maybe they'll come back another time. You know, and I think that's really important for our families to. If you're looking for a way to really compliment us, it's send people to rec and give it a shot.
Yep.
So awesome.
And Andrew does a great job. Super organized. I mean, it's a cruise ship. I mean, he does a really, really good job.
Awesome.
Yep.
So let's talk about your new role. So over the course of over the last year, you've started to transition as we've become North Carolina Fusion from the role of Twin City Recreation into this Chief Program Officer role, where we really talked about the importance of it being that we really needed someone to oversee all of our different programs, whether that's soccer, high-level soccer, recreation soccer, middle level, our TOTS programs, our adult programs, our lacrosse programs, field hockey, everything that we do. We needed someone to really say, are we doing this well? And we talked about that would be a really good fit for you, given that you've managed a lot of people and a lot of volunteers and looked at how can we do things better. And even just recently, though, we've even sort of evolved that name. We've gone from Chief Program Officer to Chief Experience Officer because we found that the program part of it seemed a bit logistical. People just tend to think of logistics when we talk about programs, and really what you're looking at is this experience, right? So talk about that. Your new role. What are you trying to do with that?
So I think just getting an overhead view of what every space, every program is doing, and finding, hey, this is what we do really well here, and here's what we do really poorly, and how can we improve both, obviously. But if we're doing something really well in the lacrosse program, how can we move that to the soccer program? If we're doing something really well in the soccer program, how can we impact the field hockey program? I really want to dive into what are people experiencing, obviously. So whether it's a coach, whether it's a parent, a player, there are so many layers of programs. So my responsibility is really to evaluate, are all of those levels really having a positive experience? Are they impacted? Is it going to change the future for them in a positive way? Sure. So it's a heavy responsibility, I think, if I'm honest. And it's a bit intimidating at times, knowing that what we do matters, and long term, really, because we talk about sports being a lifelong thing, every sport, really, for a person. So I think that's like a big way of saying it, but I want to just make sure that we're doing things for the right reasons, and we're impacting kids and families and coaches and all of that. So
awesome. And how has it? Obviously, you've had Kevin on the podcast, and how has that creation of our mission statement, really saying what we do, why we do it, and how we do it, how has that helped you in terms of really evaluating our programs and
it's narrowed the focus,
Yeah.
right? So I can always ask, does this fit here? And if it doesn't, it's a really easy no. We can say yes to a lot of things, and that obviously, when we're saying yes to something, we're probably saying no to something else, and hurting in a different area. And that has allowed me to say, this doesn't fit with what we're really wanting to do, so we need to not do it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the recent things that you've done to try and evaluate that experience, and what is kind of upcoming?
Yeah, so just in the last month, I've called it like my October DOC overview, kind of feedback.
That's
Director of coaching. Yeah, so I've only done it in the soccer space so far. So managers and coaches, part-time and full-time, basically did an evaluation of their director of coaching. So just finished those results in the last couple of weeks, and now spending last week, this week, and a little bit of next week meeting with every director and just talking about, here's the feedback we received, positive or negative. If it's positive, what can you do better? If it's negative, how can we shift something? How can we improve that program for you and help you tackle the tough stuff?
Absolutely.
So that is first step. Second step is I'm working on creating a survey for our membership as a whole, lacrosse, field hockey, soccer, and really allow that space for families to give feedback. We need it, I think, if we're honest. So we need it, and we want to know what we can be doing better. We know we're not doing everything well. So we have ideas of what we want to change, but it's always nice to get other points of view and things like that. So
and it takes time.
It does, yeah.
I think
it's a process.
It is. And I think a lot of the things that we've been working on in this experience space, it doesn't get fixed tomorrow. And I think that's frustrating for people like us because we're we want
change
perfect.
it.
We got to get it done right now. It need to be done yesterday, and we'd love to see that happen. However, some of these things are cultural. They are huge shifts in what we're doing in a positive way. But you're right. The feedback is super important for us, and so it's great that you've been able to do that, and not just get the feedback from people, but also be able to provide that feedback for our staff, which I think that as a club we haven't done a great job of really doing that. And it's I think you've realized it's been really neat to see how people have taken it on. You see folks that are going, wow, I didn't know people felt that way, or I didn't realize I was doing that, and now they can make changes, right? And for a good reason. Excellent. Were there any things that you found through the surveys from our coaches or from the managers so far that you would go, man, like everyone kind of recognizes that we do that really well, and then on the opposite side, wow, I didn't realize that we do that so poorly, or we really need to improve that. And I'm sure there's a lot of both, but were there anything that was just really glaring to you over that process so far?
Honestly, it was a huge scale, if I'm honest. So it's a little difficult. One of the big questions I asked was, what do you value most? And I think that piece was really important to me. It highlighted communication and leadership and honesty and transparency, which I think is a direction that we're trying to move toward. We haven't always been that way in the sense of, trust is one of our core values. Like, how can we create that trust? And that comes with honesty and, transparency. So those pieces that was a blaring, you need to pay attention to this. So even from a director level, but all the way up to our, club admin and leadership team and things like that. So that was a big piece. From any surprises or negatives, I'm trying to think of it was so different for every coach. So that's kind of a hard, because we paid attention to specific directors. They had to evaluate a specific director. So I think everyone's doing something well and doing something that they can improve on. So I think we all are. So I think that's the point.
It probably points out that we are an organization made up of people.
People, we're human.
and because of that, people have different strengths and weaknesses, and therefore that even though we are really driving towards this North Star of our mission statement and our vision and trying to do things a certain way, people are different, so I think that's important, that as we go along, we're going to continue to see these type of things where we have positive and negative feedback. So how do we handle that? How do we continually give feedback? And obviously that's what you're doing in your role. So it's fantastic. It's maybe a little bit of a trick question, but which program do you think is most important?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. every program's important.
Okay.
Scott, no. They are all important, yes. I would say that the base is probably the most important. If you have a really small base, meaning the rec program or our 9s and 10s or junior academy, if those programs aren't growing and improving, it's going to hurt our U18 program long term. So I would say that our youngest ages, whatever that is, whether it's U5 and 6, whether it's U9 and 10, leading into our classic teams, those hold a lot of weight and need a lot of focus, because we want, not necessarily that, we're doing all the right things in the soccer space, but we want kids to enjoy the game, because if they hate it by the time they're 10, we're in trouble.
Sure.
So we want to make it a whole positive experience from all the different sides of it. So,
and when you think about that, I think that a lot of people think of our program. I know when I moved to Winston, everyone talked about Twins or Greensboro at that time, Greensboro Youth Soccer. That's the high level. Yeah. That's the top level of play. Our kids not ready for that, and now you're talking about that recreation level and even our levels as they reach to the top and how important that is. I think it kind of goes right into, and I know you're not saying that our top levels are not important, and we are investing heavily in
those
in all those
become less
ones.
important if that program isn't doing what it needs to do. So,
and in terms of what we've talked about the last couple of weeks, I told you about the conference that I went to with Project Play, and when you hear a stat like 69% of kids quit youth sports by the age of 12, you're going, we're not doing something right, right? We got to look ourselves in the mirror and go, what do we have to do differently? And I think that when we look at your role now, you're having an opportunity to really evaluate that and go in the soccer space, in the lacrosse space, in the field hockey space, in the parent space, in the coaching space, in the club space. What are we not doing that is causing this? Because you've already talked about this great experience you had as a kid.
Right.
And probably most of our families, the parents have had in one sport or another, they had something similar. It's amazing how we talk about our youth sports experiences and how impactful it was, and yet these trends are happening, knowing that it could be a great impact on kids, and maybe we're not doing anything about it, right? So I think this is important for our membership to know that we're thinking this way, and we know that there needs to be shifts. There's some things we're doing really well.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's really impactful, and it's fantastic, and kids are having a great experience, but there's other things that we need to do better. So that's awesome. One of the things that we've done is change to multiple sports. And we've historically been a soccer club. Right. Why do you think it's important that we have these other sports?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Every kid's not going to play soccer, if we're honest. So we offer in the soccer space, we've offered for a long time something that is organized and is focused on development and the right things. And other sports are kind of like renegades a little bit. Like they, soccer is its own entity of it has a state association, a national association. Other sports don't have that. They don't have any kind of I don't know the word I'm looking for, like group to or
governing body.
Thank you. Yes, governing body that's kind of directing them and showing them like here's what should be you should be focused on, and here's what you shouldn't be focused on, things like that.
And some seem to have that. Correct. But still there's different groups within that.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So like a basketball AAU or a lacrosse has U.S. lacrosse.
But they still get to do whatever they
people do
want.
a lot. They don't necessarily look to that as the governing body all the time, based on what we've experienced here.
So I think in the soccer space we've learned, that since we are doing things for the right reasons and we're trying to help develop kids, that we can do that in other spaces, not necessarily from like you and I, from a lacrosse expertise from the sport itself, but from organization wise and development wise. So we can help those directors of those sports really make a bigger impact and impact more kids and provide another space for kids to do sport. Sure. We know how important that is. Yeah. So and we have fields and space to do that. So I think it's a big part of it.
And is there, would you say there's, obviously we now have soccer, lacrosse, field hockey. Is there another sport that you could see coming? What makes sense for us potentially in the future? And what we don't talk about really necessarily basketball or volleyball because it's
You have to
different
have
facilities,
stuff.
right, and different things. But
Yeah.
given what we have in terms of
Yeah.
resources of facilities and the staff we have, what would be potentially another fit in the future based on what you're kind of seeing with trends in sport?
Running, if we could get some kind of running group, I think that's, even in an adult space, our Winston-Salem community is heavy on the runners, let's be real.
Yeah.
So,
and we've got great places
we
for
do,
them to run.
yeah. So that would be a next step potentially. Obviously, football is a beast of its own, American football. So that's a challenge. I wouldn't say necessarily football, but maybe flag football. And that's a growing area in sport. And then ultimate frisbee, there's not a there are leagues, which is actually really cool. And we bring a lot of leagues here. And so we obviously have fields. They just need a field. That's the beauty of it. So if we can provide a space for that, I would say that would be a potential. But I would say for me, if I'm honest, focusing on the sports we're doing right now and then making sure that those are managed well and doing the right things, then we can take the steps to do something different.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Yep.
So you mentioned trust as one of our core values, and we talk about it a lot in terms of being able to give and receive feedback. There has to be a certain level of trust. And I think something that we have found in over this last couple of months of the process has been that we've heard a lot of families or parents say that they're scared to provide their feedback or constructive criticism or a fear of their child being blackballed or not being picked for a team or the coach being upset or something like that. How do we gain that trust from families? Because I think in our individual conversations with families, when we've heard the same thing, we're going, how can we fix it if we don't know? We're sorry that feeling exists. That's certainly not what we're trying to create in our culture. So what can we do about that?
Great question. Honestly, it's a gut punch to hear that, because that's so far from what I think we're about, if I'm honest. And so to impact that is to create trust, whether that's open lines of communication and just being really transparent. I think setting proper expectations from the beginning of a season through the end. Parents need to know that they can go to their coach. They need to know that they can also reach out to their DOC. And then if they don't feel like that is true for them, something needs to shift, I would say. And so I think better communication from their coach on a feedback level. Just, we've changed the feedback process in the soccer space a little bit. So I think that is improving that area, or I hope it is. And that was the goal, so that kids have more knowledge of what is going on in the way they play and what they're doing, and from the mental side, the physical, all that stuff. So I'm hoping that, the more we're communicating and talking and being honest about things with expectations, the better that will become. Or at least I hope it does.
And how do you want parents to approach that? Because I think we all know that when you say, like, and Kevin mentioned it, when you say, I'd like to give you some feedback, what's the first thing you think of when you hear that? And then also we've received plenty of awesome, that's air quotes, awesome emails from parents that are really upset about things. But how do we want to receive feedback? What's the best way for that to happen?
I would say the first thing is to remember that we're human. I always air back to that, because I think we get so caught up in that it's our kid and we're going to say whatever we need to in the moment to make sure that something changes, that we forget that the person on the other side maybe is a human. And that we maybe wouldn't want to receive that kind of email at our jobs. So we want feedback, if I'm honest. That's why we're taking the steps that we are. But I think constructive feedback is so important. Taking a step back and saying, I know this is my kid, but how can I help this situation from my side as well? And so I would say an email is great, but we also want to meet and have conversations, because emails get construed really poorly. And I know that I've taken things personally that probably weren't intended the way that they were intended. So I would say a step maybe is to to provide feedback constructively, calmly, knowing that the person's a human, and then say, hey, why don't we get together and talk about it, versus I'm going to say a lot of things in an email that I maybe wouldn't want to say tomorrow.
Sure.
That's right. And I would also say, like, when something happens and you're frustrated, to wait a little bit. I find that if I give myself 24 hours after a frustrating moment, I feel a whole lot different the next day. Exactly. So I would just say that would be, for me, that's a rule for myself. So I would challenge families to do the same. They're probably not wrong in their frustration. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we react and we respond very differently if we give ourselves some time to think about it. And I would say to just be respectful, because people are much more receptive to feedback if it's come the right way. I want to change if someone's like, hey, have you thought about this? And da-da-da-da, you know, I'll be much more apt to be like, you're exactly right. I hadn't even thought about that. Or I want to change and do better, and et cetera. Because we all are here for the kids. And, you know, we sometimes forget that the coaches are about the kids too, and our staff, our admin, everybody. That's why we do this job. We wouldn't do it if we weren't about the kids. So,
and you think about how many of our staff, which is a huge number, stay up at night because we really do want to do a good job, and we're so upset about maybe an email that we've received, and when we're trying to do the right thing, it didn't work out that way, and we take it personally, and we probably should do a better job. We all need to grow in that area, but at the same time, if we're doing this as a partnership with families to make this best for the kids, then we have to speak to each other in the right manner, and those type of things. So that's great. You said the other day, we were talking about kind of, you know, where you want to move, where you want to go forward in your career, or, you know, with your family, whatever it may be. And you talked about the impact. You talked about your desire, no matter what you were ever doing, you want to make an impact, and especially in the community you're in. Do you feel you're doing that? And if so, how do you feel you're doing that? And if not, what needs to change?
Also a loaded question. Thank you. You're just firing away today.
This is a tough podcast.
That's okay.
I want you to speak very, very deeply about your feelings.
I would say yes and no. I definitely want to make impact. Not for myself, just because I think it's important that kids and families are doing things that matter. And I think sports matter. I know youth sports matter. They mattered to me. They mattered to my family. So it's a heavy question. So am I having personal impact in this space? Yes and no. That would be my immediate question. I think yes in the space of I know what I want things to be like going forward, and I know where we're falling short, and I want things to change, and so in that sense of like, am I passionate about making sure that things are done well and for the right reasons? Absolutely. So I would say yes in that space. No, because sometimes I don't always see it, and I'm not working with kids one-on-one anymore, and that would be the biggest shift for me in my head, because I've been around kids for 10, 15, how old am I? 10 years, 12 years. So I think that part feels like it's not impact because I'm not directly, working with kids. That's not necessarily true. I think it's just my own head saying, you're not with kids, so, it's not a direct relationship. So that's a challenge for myself. How can I be with kids more? That would be my question to myself. So yes and no.
Awesome. That's great. Well, we always like to kind of finish up our podcast with some spontaneous questions. You've already gotten a couple spontaneous ones since you didn't know what I was going to ask today.
Gosh.
But this is going to be rapid fire. Okay. So
I'm ready.
You ready?
I don't know.
Okay, here we go. What is your favorite food?
Ice cream.
That didn't take
long.
I
would eat it for every meal.
Favorite place you visited?
Oh, goodness. Fun or not fun?
Either way.
Ooh.
Well, hopefully it was fun if it was your favorite.
Well, like the community of places I've been, like Haiti, like that's not fun. But,
I gotcha. That's fair.
The people were amazing.
Yeah.
I've been a lot of places, Scott.
You can't say Pufftown.
I know.
Well, you can if you want to.
Pufftown, it's so great. That's where I live. This isn't rapid fire anymore.
I know.
Gosh. I don't know.
All right, we'll come back to it.
Okay, come back.
What about a place you want to visit?
I want to go to Hawaii, but that's purely selfish.
Two people have already said Hawaii was their favorite place to go.
I know, right?
So,
see? Maybe it's a sign.
Maybe they skewed your decision. I don't know.
Maybe they could have.
All right, what's your favorite band or musician?
Oh, Sister Hazel.
Wow. All right. They were just in Winston.
They're still great.
They are good. Favorite sports team?
The Heels and the Dallas Cowboys.
Ugh. Boo. Boo, Cowboys. Who is the MVP on the Fusion staff?
Kristen Strain.
It's like unanimous decision.
You're the best.
Who's the funniest person on the Fusion staff?
Oh, gosh. That's also a loaded question. Everybody's so different in the way of their humor. Yeah. You're the best with the movie quotes. Mark has the best banter. Adam's just ridiculous. Everyone's really funny.
Mike's got Mike Joke Monday.
Mike is Mike's my kind of funny, so that's
so
just
Mike.
Mike Joke Monday. Yeah,
Mike Joke Monday.
It might be. He always brings me the best jokes.
The dad jokes.
They're so good.
They are good. So good. They're really good. The one about the unsharpened pencil.
They're so good. We need to do that on Instagram.
Yeah, we need to.
Anyways.
If you could have dinner with anyone in history, who would it be and why?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's deep.
That is so deep. I'm not gonna have a quick answer. That's deep, Scott.
I know. I should have given you more time to think about
I know. You should have preempted. Yeah. Come back to that one too.
Okay. You've already answered my other one, so
oh,
it was
crud.
you got to do it.
All right.
Maybe we just answer it on our social media.
Maybe.
This is Sarah's follow-up response to the question.
Guess what it would be.
Yeah, we could do a survey.
Gosh, that's really hard. I want to meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
I really do.
Well, name someone, even if it's not the only. Maybe it's someone you've thought of that you would.
You've stumped me. I don't know, dude.
All right. Well, we'll pass.
I failed.
We'll pass on that.
Not bad.
Did you ever figure out what favorite place you visited?
Still
in Poptown.
Probably still Poptown. That's where my family is.
Right.
They're even there right
That's
now.
fair enough.
No, I'm just kidding. Probably like where we went on our honeymoon, which was just Riviera Maya. So
awesome.
That was. I mean, let's be real. You sit in the sun all day. It's great.
Fantastic.
Selfish.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate the work that you do for the club. I hope that people have a better, obviously, understanding of what you do and what you're going to be doing over the next, hopefully forever, for the club. No pressure. And I think that now people can obviously know you better.
Yep.
And I think that's really important as everyone gets to know who's involved in our club, what's going on behind the scenes. So thank you. Thank you for all your effort, and glad you took time to do this fun podcast on this rainy day at the park. So
I didn't wear my blazer.
So thank you guys so much for joining us today on the North Carolina Fusion podcast. We'll be back soon with another episode. Thank you.
For more information, please visit our website, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to this podcast.